Okay. Good morning to those who are in the Western Hemisphere, and good afternoon to those who are in the Eastern side of the world. I am Omar Mohammed. It's probably the first time I pronounce my name in English with Ain, not with O. I am a research fellow at the program on extremism at George Washington University. I'm also a historian from Mosul and known until recently as the founder of Mosul Eye. A news blog was established to expose the brutality and the crimes of Daesh in Mosul. With us today is Herta Griffel, later known as Baitch, who was born in Vienna, Austria in 1933, the same year Adolf Hitler came to power.
1933.
33, yes. She was born to Jewish parents, Bela and Wolf Griffel, who came to Vienna from southern Poland. But their presence in Vienna was complicated. They were never Polish because Poland denied Jews citizenship if they lived outside Poland at the time of the independence, nor Austrian citizens. Her parents were subject to the defunct Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Instead, Herta was a stateless person. After Anschluss, the unification of Nazi Germany and Austria, the oppression of Jews in Vienna began. Following Kristallnacht, her father was taken into forced labor, where he fell ill and died in 1939. Orphaned, Herta was entrusted by her mother to strangers from the US to get her out of danger. The German Jewish Aid Society of Baltimore had permission and space for only one Jewish child to bring for nine Jewish children to bring to the US. Herta was one of them. Herta arrived in the US on the first night of Hanukkah in 1940. She only learned the fate of her mother in 2003. Bela was deported to Minsk in 1940 with thousands of Venice Jews and died in the forest killing center Mali Tostinik. Before I start our conversation, Herta.
Yes.
And I was planning many things, but what you mentioned to me about the burden changed my whole perspective, and it made me really sad because it is something not easy to live with. But we will come to this later. As you know, Herta, probably I have told you before, I have been working with your grandson, Isa. We were working together to revive the Jewish heritage of Mosul, who sadly also faced deportation in 1948. And everything was confiscated, and they were denied the right to be equal citizens in Iraq, which is why they were brutally deported from Iraq. But after all these years, I felt the responsibility to bring back those memories, to bring them back to live again among the people, but also to remind the people about the brutality that took place in that part of the world, and also the deep problem and concerning problem about the ability to hate and the hatred against the Jews. We have just heard in the news a few days ago of another attack against a Jewish synagogue in Jarba in Tunisia. Many more attacks happened in other parts of the world, and it continues to happen. There is a continuity in this hatred against the Jews, which is why intellectuals, professionals, practitioners, they have responsibility to fight and combat this hatred and this anti-Semitism. It is our responsibilities to stop it and to educate people about what happened. In many other parts of the world, Herta, especially in my homeland, in my country, people do not only have anti-Semitism, but in many cases they deny that it even existed or happened. And that is very dangerous to happen we are in 2023, and there are still people who deny that the Holocaust happened. Asa knows very well, when we had the discussions with the Mosul Jewish community, many of them also felt this Hitler when they were in Mosul, and how Germany was, or Nazi Germany at that time, was doing its usual propaganda against the Jews in Iraq. There were many newspapers writing against the Jewish communities of Iraq. Even German scholars who were stationed in Iraq, they would write in public in newspapers against the Jews, and showing or telling the Iraqis that you have to be careful. If you have Jews in your country, they will stab you in the back, and many more anti-Semitic sentiment. And that is why, Herta, I contacted you, and I thought that it is important to hear your story, because you and many survivors of the Holocaust can tell us the truth as it happened, and can always remind us that we should never hate, that we should always consider living together. But it's also important to show them that this brutality happened, and this brutality happened by also people, not aliens, not from the other side of the world, but it happened by also people who are capable of hatred, capable of destruction. And if you allow me, Herta, I would like to start with what inspired you to tell your story with the others. I know that you have recorded your story with the Holocaust Museum, and the importance of this will always be of immense importance to all of us. But what inspires you to keep telling your story? The floor is yours.
What inspires me is that I fear that people will forget about the Holocaust in the years to come. There's so much pain and war in so many parts of the world, but the Holocaust was different because one man, Adolf Hitler, was able to destroy 6 million Jews.
Children.
Among them 1,500,000 children alone. I was one of a very fortunate 9 children from the German community, from the Viennese community that were left after our fathers were taken away. And our mothers brought us to the community center, where this committee from the United States came and said they had 9 visas, just 9 visas. And they were going to check and examine all the children to see which ones could make the trip to America. And for some reason, 9 of us were chosen. 4 were 15 years old, 4 were 13, and I was the youngest at 7. And how I came to be lucky, I guess it's lucky, fortunate enough to be a part of this small group that came to America in December of 1940. I feel a responsibility to speak out for all those who were lost and who didn't make it to this country. And because of Hitler's hate, he went into Austria and Germany and targeted Jews. It didn't matter whether they were in the government or citizens of Germany or Vienna. For many, many decades, he stripped them of their titles, their professorships, their doctorates. They were not able to treat people in the hospitals. And it started that way. And little by little, it became harder and harder for the Jewish community to survive. I feel it's a need for me to remind people who can easily forget about the Holocaust, that it happened. And there are so many people who say it never happened, that it's very, very painful to try to change people's minds. And I just feel an obligation to all those children and people I left behind, because I was so lucky to get out when I did. And I just have this obligation to talk about it wherever I can, to children, to adults, to schools. And it's a subject that can easily be forgotten and wrote about in a textbook for a couple of lines, but it's more than that. It was a time of hatred and fear of the other that has never been in those numbers, has that never happened before. And Jews were taken, they were killed, they died of typhus and disease, and their bodies were burned in crematoriums. And even the ashes from the crematoriums came into the city and onto the homes, and people they either didn't care. I don't know how that happened, how people could know that they existed among them in that city, Auschwitz. And they lived with these ashes of Jews who were burned. And it's a time that cannot be forgotten by people, because it's so easy to forget. It's easy to forget a war here and a war there and the community here and there. But this was Hitler came into Vienna, Germany, Vienna, into Poland, all of Europe, even to Italy and Greece, and rounded up Jews for destruction. How can I forget about that and not feel that I must speak out and remind people of those times, and how much damage one person, Adolf Hitler, and his crew and his men and his army how much damage they could do to a people in those years. I have to speak out, and I have to talk about it, and I have to remind people that it happened. I feel the burden of a survivor, because any survivor of a car crash or a plane crash feels like, why was I the lucky one to escape? So it's that kind of feeling that I have to speak out and talk about it whenever people will listen to me.
I'm so sorry, Herta, to
It happens again and again. We have hate everywhere, hate of the other, hate of someone who is different from us, someone who speaks a different language. They are, I don't know how human beings, how it started. I just don't know how hate began, and fear of the other, and denial of other people's rights and lives. I just don't understand it to this day. I hear about pain and suffering in so many countries, and it doesn't end. It doesn't end. We don't learn lessons from the past. We don't learn lessons from the past, and it goes on and on. And if human minds can change to accept other people who are not exactly like them, what's the hope for the world? What's the hope for mankind? Today, I feel that in the United States, we're a country of people who are in different mindsets and very much against what the other thinks. We're against people of other colors, of other nationalities. If it goes on in the United States, certainly it goes on in every other country in the world. And where will it end? When will it end? When will it change? That's my question to God, or whatever higher power we believe in. When will it change? When will it stop? When will we accept each other as human beings and as neighbors and friends and colleagues? I don't know. I just have to speak out about what I know and what I've experienced. And my father died in labor, and my mother was taken to a concentration camp where it wasn't a concentration camp, it was a killing camp. When Jews came off the trains from Vienna or wherever they came from, they were shot, and their bodies fell into pits, large pits that sometimes they had to dig themselves. And I just don't know the answer, and I keep questioning, why did it happen? And I have to talk about the fact that it did happen, and I just don't want this to go on in the world. I'm 90 years old, and I just fear for my children and grandchildren that they will grow up in a world of hate and distrust and bad government. I don't know what else to tell you.
I don't know. I don't have words, Herta, but let me say this, that we are so lucky that you have survived and you are among us. You are with us. So you can tell the story of those who couldn't survive. And let me also wish you a happy birthday, Herta.
Thank you.
You have reached your 90th year, and may you live longer and live it always in happiness and the prosperity. It is unfair. It is unfair that those who lived through the Holocaust and those who survived always have the burden to tell the story. It is the responsibility also of the whole world to keep telling this story in order to stop those who are able to hate, who are able to destroy the others from doing what they are doing. It is a very complicated and difficult question that you ask. Is like, why did it happen? How can we understand how it happened? But sometimes it's also important to know, and you know this very well. Sadly, humans are capable of hatred and destruction, and that's how we should start dealing with it. We assume that people are capable of hatred and destruction, but we have a responsibility to also show them the right direction.
How can we do that? How can we do that? It only seems to be getting worse. How can we do that? How can anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim, anti-Asian, anti-Black, anti-everybody. It's fear. It's fear of them. It's fear that they will, I don't know, succeed or something. I don't know what it is. I have had a wonderful life in this country, in this wonderful country. I have a wonderful family. I have 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. And those people did not have that opportunity. Those children never had that opportunity. They never had the luck, or whatever you want to call it, that I did to get out. In 1940, it was impossible to get out, and only children were able to get out. Our government did not help that much. They really did not. They didn't want immigration, but they allowed a certain amount of children to come in with visas, and it was that amount was never filled. It was never filled, and I just don't understand how it all happened. I don't know how little by little people can lose their humanity, cutting off their hair, and in the camps, cutting off women's hair, taking gold out of men's teeth after they were dead. And why? I just can't get my head around it. I never can. I never could. And as a child of the Holocaust and one of the younger of the survivors that we have in our speakers group, I must speak. I must warn. I was born of hatred and prejudice and fear of the other. There's nothing to fear. We all are human. We all want a good life. We all want a safe place to live. I don't know what else to say. I have to tell the story. I can't be quiet whenever I have a chance, especially to children's groups, because they know nothing about the Holocaust. They know nothing about European history or world history. And they have to be educated. People have to be educated in order to understand that we're all the same. We're all made of the same flesh and blood. And there's nothing to fear. We should hope for each other that we succeed and that we're healthy. I just don't know what else to say. You have any questions for me?
Yes. It's one of the reasons why we are talking, Herta, is to amplify this voice, is to share this message with the rest of the world, and to keep reminding the people. But if I may ask, what is the in your experience, what is the big misconception about the Holocaust that you have experienced, and how we can address it and treat it?
Well, one of the problems is that it's not talked about. It's not taught in schools. Schools are not taught about hatred and prejudice and things like the Holocaust. That it was 6 million Jews who were targeted because they were Jews, from small villages to big cities to young and old, and people who were educated, who were not educated, I don't know how we can change, and it happens today. It keeps on happening. And if we teach the Holocaust, maybe we can show the world that these horrible things can happen if we're not careful, if we're not alert, and we don't speak out when we hear falsehoods and denials. We have to speak out. We have to, if we hear something that is untrue, we have to somehow stand up. It's difficult. It's very difficult to stand up to someone who makes a remark about anti-Semitism or race or color. It's very difficult for a college student or a smaller person or even an adult to speak out in a group that they're wrong, that this is wrong, that this is painful, and it's dangerous, very dangerous.
You mentioned the education, and it is definitely one of the biggest problems, because it might be taught in some parts of the world. There are many other parts of the world where there is no such education about the Holocaust, or even about the
Even
Jewish
here,
communities who existed in these countries. How can we ensure that this education is integrated in, especially the children who do not who grow up not knowing anything about the history, not knowing about the brutality that happened in the past. Some might even celebrate those events as they were on the other side of the war, and they do not know, or they don't care about the Holocaust. What should we do more, Herta? How can we introduce this more into education?
I think we have to be alert for signs of, I think it all depends on leaders of the countries in which we live all over the world. When you hear signals that signal that a group is being targeted, you have to speak out. You have to try to have leaders who will take care of their people. It has to be in history books. It has to be taught in schools. It has to be, people have to be educated. In the United States, we have groups that think that others will take over their lives and their jobs, and they are full of hate and fear of us who are not, or anyone who's not like them. If you're not like them, they hate you.
Yeah.
They won't.
After you arrived in the United States, have you ever managed to be reunited with people who knew your family, who were from the same area where your family lived?
I had just a small family, my mother, father, and an aunt. And I have met people from Vienna, yes, who escaped. And of course, everyone who's here or anywhere escaped somehow. If they were smart, they escaped in the 30s when the signs were there, that Jews were going to be targeted. The signs were there that Jews were going to be killed in Europe. And many people who could left for other countries. But by the time that I came to the United States in 1940, all the doors were closed. No country would take anyone who was a refugee. No one would open their doors for you. I've met people from Vienna who have had different experiences. They all got out somehow with different ways. They either came with their families or they were lucky enough to be sent to relatives. And those people speak out and they try to educate about what happened and what obviously happened, because there are full of movies and tapes and records that the Germans left behind of concentration camps all over the world. They were very, very definite. They were very methodical about keeping records. And now we can, a lot of people can trace where their family was killed, in which concentration camp. And I found out that my mother was killed in Mali Trostanek concentration camp near, it's now, I believe, in Belarus. And the Austrians have put up a little plaque that says, here.
One of the questions we received, Herta, is about your group discussion. What kind of experience or responses you get from them?
From children, especially inner children's city, who have gone to different foster homes and grown up with grandparents and so forth. They're very interested. They have no idea. They're interested in my story because they too have had experiences of being unsettled and displaced to different people in their lives. And hatred is and the adults that I speak to, and most of them are not Jewish, are very receptive to information that I can give them. Some know a lot about those times and some know nothing. A lot of people don't want to know. They want to know. And people who are in danger are used as a political weapon in our country and different other countries. And it's gotten to be a very political, I don't know about other countries, but in our country, it's become a political issue. And it should be recognized as soon as it happens. You can't let it go for too long, because after a while, there's no turning back. We have to speak out now about what happened in the Holocaust and what can happen to our other people who are not like them, or what they think is them. Without speaking out and without information, I don't know what can happen. It will happen over and over again. And we just don't learn. We just don't learn from history. It's gotten to be very uncomfortable to even speak to our friends who have different views, and it's very sad for us sometimes. And it's not just us; it's everyone. We are a country divided. The United States right now is a country divided. We just don't trust each other. We have different thoughts about issues, and we're very divided. And we have to choose in the United States, thank goodness we can choose our government. In other countries, you can't. We have a democracy, and we've had a democracy all these years, and we can't lose it. We can't lose it in this country. There aren't that many democracies around the world, and we have to guard against losing those rights and privileges that everyone should have.
During my work with Asa on the preservation of the Jewish memory of Mosul, we encountered one of the members of the Jewish community, and Asa knows him. He was given a number in Mosul after he was arrested. He was given a number, just like the concentration camps. Jews were given numbers, and they would only be called by the numbers. He was experiencing the same in the prison there, and he still hates the number 137 because that's the number they gave him. And this is something that we should keep talking about, but sometimes we just don't know how exactly we should talk about it. Sometimes it is also the fear and the risk of triggering the trauma, Herta. It is something we don't want to cause you or any other members of the surviving communities. But how can we safely engage in such a discussion without triggering trauma? So when I spoke to him, it took him 2 days until he came back and calmed down, and then I was able to communicate with him again, because that number, it triggered so many traumas in his life that he still remembers. He's over 92 years old, and he still remembers what happened to him. He still remembers how he would only be called by the number, not by his name. Sometimes makes him even question his own name. But how can we safely engage in order to tell these stories without doing harm to the survivors?
I can only talk about my experience in the United States with our government. We just have to choose the right people who know history, and they are willing to accept people of all kinds. And if even in a college or a classroom or in a group of friends, if someone says something that's not true, or someone says something about hating or fear of another culture, they have to speak out. We have to be alert. We have to be alert. We have to speak out, and we have to say no when there's a falsehood being spoken about. We have. It's the only way. If we don't speak out, I don't know what kind of a future we will have. If we don't speak out, I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead, please.
If we don't speak out and tell people that whatever they're saying is cruel or wrong, or that something, that the Holocaust or some other horror in other countries didn't happen, you have to say you're wrong. You're wrong. You've got to learn about it. You can't just hate people for their color or their skin, their thoughts. Everyone is entitled to their own experiences and thoughts, and most people want to do the right thing, but there are people around who don't. And we hope and pray that, I don't know how much hope I have in it at this point, at 90 years old, that I'll see any kind of a good change in people's attitude towards each other. It's the only thing that can change is people's attitudes and their acceptance of one another and their interest in one another, and to find out something about them instead of staying away and making up stories in their minds about the other person, the one who's not like them, who's different from them. And if the ideas clash, you can talk about it, you can discuss it. You can't just let it go all over. It has to start with us. It has to start with every one of us. There's such a danger of hatred throughout the world. It's very dangerous, and I don't know how we can change it, Omar. Maybe your experience, you can, with your experience, you can talk about it better than I can. We have to learn about other people and their suffering and what they want out of life, and what their needs are and what their hopes are. And unless we accept one another as equals, and I hate to say that, we love each other. We don't have to love each other, but just accept each other. It would be a much more wonderful world. We have this beautiful, wonderful world, and the danger of hatred has to be taught worldwide, not just in our country, all over the world. Somehow, little by little, maybe we've got to start talking to people and not be silent when things are said or done that are wrong. There's a lot of wrong going on in the world, and a lot of pain and misery in every part of the world, and it's necessary. There's enough world for all of us. There's enough world for all of us. There's the Jews of Europe weren't targeted because of land or land accession or anything like that. It had nothing to do with that. It was just because they were different.
It was because they were Jews. That's the only reason they were targeted.
They were Jews.
Yes. I know you have. Yes, please.
I'm sorry.
I know you have already emphasized many of those points, but what advice would you have for young people who want to make a difference, who want to contribute to combating anti-Semitism?
To learn what's going on, to learn about what's going on in their neighborhood and their government and their representatives, and to choose people to govern, especially in our democracy, who will keep that democracy safe and secure for our country and for other countries. I don't know what wars solve. They don't solve anything. and the destruction and the pain in the world is just too much. It's never ending. It's just too much. And people have to realize that it can be changed, that there can be change. And that's what I've always hoped for and prayed for. And I
Thank
don't
you
know.
so much.
I don't know what else, Omar. I wish I knew what to do. I wish I knew what people can do. The only thing I know is that they can speak out and they can tell the truth to anyone who will listen, and hope that it gets through somehow, and that people are better educated about the world and what's going on in the world, and about different people and their needs and their needs and their wants and their desire to live a decent life.
As you know, one of the responsibilities that I feel myself responsible to do is to translate and raise awareness about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism to communities where no such education exists, where people are not aware of this or they are in deep denial. And I might translate some or all of what you said and put it in Arabic to be precise. But if you have a message to the world, to those who are listening to you, but also to the people who haven't heard of the Holocaust, no one taught them about the Holocaust, what your message would be?
Learn all you can about the world and about freedom and democracy, and speak out when you hear a falsehood. Try. It's very, very difficult to change someone's mind or to interject your feelings when someone gives strong feelings about a subject. But we've got to do it. If the only hope is for us to is for the whole world to be more educated. Education is key. Education is key. And we have to speak out when we hear a wrong. When we have to speak out when we hear someone making jokes about Black people or Asian people or Muslim people. They only come to want a good life. That's all they come for. They deserve as human beings to live and to prosper, especially in our land. Everyone deserves a chance to live a decent life, to earn a decent wage, and to care for their family, and to feel safe in their homes. Safety. That's to feel safe. Is so important. It's all important. If you don't feel safe somewhere, it's the end. You must. I don't know where it could start except by education and speaking out. I don't know if there's any other way that it can happen. I just don't know, because there's so much disinformation in the world. There's so much disinformation, and people believe what they want to believe, whether it's true or not. And there's a lot of disinformation about everything in the world, not only the Holocaust, not only wars in other places, about other people. It's sad when you meet someone and they're from another part of the world, and they are not treated, they're treated like not only outsiders, but like they're not human, and thought of it that way. I don't know what else I don't know what else we can do. Maybe the young people, maybe the younger generation will find ways to do this. God knows, I hope so. We have to leave it to the next generation and the generation after that to make things better. To make things better for everybody. There's room for everyone in the world. There's room for everybody. There's no love. We have to find ways to find more love for each other. Maybe it starts with love. I don't know. A hug, a good word to someone, a hello, how are you doing? Just to acknowledge each other, Maybe that's a start. Not to be afraid of someone who isn't exactly like them, whose skin color is different, or whose religion is different from yours. What's the difference? I mean, let them have their religion, let you have yours, and there's no reason to argue about it. There's no reason to have conflict between you. We all worship some sort of greater being than we are, whether it's you believe in God or some other, whatever you believe. We can't depend on God alone. We have to depend on ourselves. We have to do it ourselves. And if this generation hasn't done a great job, a terrible job, we have to rectify it in the next generation. And it's up to you students, wherever you are, whoever you are, to try to make a wrong into a right, and to not just go along with falsehoods and just try to convey a sense of acceptance and interest in other people. I think we don't know about other people. I think that's one of the reasons that there's so much hate in the world. We don't know what they're like. We don't know what they believe. We don't know. We have to find out. We have to speak to them. We have to have conversations. I don't know what else to say. We can only leave it to the next generation to make things better, because our generation hasn't done a great job. We've done a terrible job. Everyone all over the world has done a horrible job. In this decade, things have gone so bad, and we've got to rectify it. We've got to change it. We've got to have people who speak out and people who will listen to them. And we can only hope that the next generation will be better. We'll have it better. We have to believe in it. We have to hope for them to be able to navigate the future and make it better for everyone. and try to make peace. Peace. What's why? I don't understand why there's so much agony in the world. I just can't get my head around it. I just don't understand it. In the Far East and in the Near East and the Europe and large Russia, Poland, it goes on and on and on. But we have to start here. We have to start in our communities. And we have to speak out. I don't know any other way that it can happen. I hope others do. I hope someone else will come up with some sort of a, if not a solution, then it's some sort of hope for the future. Because we live in a wonderful world when you really think about it. No matter what part of the world, so much of the world has been destroyed by war. If we let it be, maybe it'll come back. Maybe trees will grow again. Maybe flowers will grow again. Maybe people will be happy again and enjoy life like we're supposed to. Like we're supposed to. Omar, I don't know what else to tell you. I hope as a professor, you know better than I do. You know more than I do. You know more history than I do. And I don't know what else to say. It's up to people like you to teach and for students to listen. It's wonderful to have someone to teach, but you have to have people to listen to you.
That's what we are trying to do, Herta, at the program on extremism at George Washington University, is to trying to understand extremism, to understand anti-Semitism, in order to know how to treat it, because it is the scary part of all of this is that it continues to happen, and it even evolves and grows even bigger. It evolves day by day, and anti-Semitism doesn't seem to stop. It is growing and getting, even with all the modern technology, they have even more space to amplify their hatred message. That's what we are trying to do, which is why, as I said, Herta, it's why your story is important. It's why everything you said is important. You are the one who lived through those horrors and this terrifying experience. And just thinking about, and I told you in the beginning that this stopped me, thinking that you feel a burden, that you have left someone behind. It is devastating. And I hope that you already know this, but I want to remind you that we are so happy that you are with us, and we are so happy that you survived. So you will bear witness and tell the stories of those who couldn't survive, so we can continue combating hatred, anti-Semitism, and all forms of hate. I cannot thank you enough for your time.
Omar, excuse me. I have not talked about social media. I just haven't talked about it. That's something that is new in our society, and spreading falsehoods. And I don't know how to change. I don't know much about social media, except that they practically control people's minds, and you have to know what is true and what isn't true. And we have to have people like you who would teach them and make them believe that they have to find out the truth for themselves and not believe what they hear. Social media is to me is the killer of information. I maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I fear it. I don't belong to it. I know that most people walk around with their iPhones and they're connected to all kinds of networks that have different speakers and talk about different things, and there's a lot of misinformation and hatred of other people on social media. I didn't even talk about it. And
Probably
it's
another time, since our I don't want to take more. I want to speak to you even more, but I don't want to keep you longer. It's been already over an hour, but I leave the last word to you. Whatever you would like to say.
I think that anyone who has had the opportunity to go to college and to learn a little bit more than they get in high school is very fortunate, and it should be their duty, feel that they have a duty to learn and to understand the things that have happened and to try to rectify some of the wrongs of the world. I don't know how they can do it. I just hope that people who are educated are smart enough to get the word out that there's a plague among us of hatred, and I can only hope in the younger generation. We've done a very bad job. I'm sorry I'm sorry I'm sorry to change to talk talk instead of you. I'm sorry.
No. I'm listening, and I would like to listen even more. But the reason is, like, I don't want to take more time of yours. I know it's also the morning there. Let me thank you very much for these insights, but also many thanks to Asa for helping us in all of this. His communication was really important in all of this, and I wish to all of you Shabbat Shalom. And as Asa and myself, we mix Shabbat Arabic with Hebrew and say Shabbat Alaikum.
Shabbat alaikum wa alaikum Shabbat.
And thank you everyone for listening. Everyone within our listening, thank you for listening to me and to try to understand what I'm trying to say. I'm not a good public speaker, but I'm trying to convey what's wrong and what's wrong with us today, and don't want to make you unhappy as students and young people. I just want you to know that we believe in you, and we trust in you, and we hope in you.
Thank you so much. To our audience, you will find the recording of this session available on the program on extremism at George Washington University website. Thank you so much, Asa. Thank you so much, Herta. And again, Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.